inspection. And I'll shortly, when I finish, I'll ask Jackie to report to you, because they did not meet with me. They will meet with the officers, but my understanding is that it was a very successful meeting. So, and that confirmed our position in having the highest grade we possibly can in the Ofsted CQC inspection. So that's really good. What would I want to report to you on? So we come near to the end of term and everybody's really tired and they all want to go on holiday. To say that I think we're moving very well with safety valve and meeting most of our targets and are within the range of the budget requirements and the DFE. We've seen the Oldsmead unit open for children with autism. That's I am talking a bit to our new co-optees. That's a base at Oldsmead School Repurposed Children's Centre, as a primary base, and currently has 4 children in it with autism and will eventually have 15. We've seen works begin at Alexandra Primary for socially, emotionally and mental health children with sort of social emotional disturbance, which is long overdue, and that's a repurposing of the caretaker's house. We've got work starting at the Brook for an additional unit, complex needs, and there's complex needs for school leavers, young, older people at Riverside. And these are great developments with SEND and are within, I would say, the vision which government seems to be developing in relation to having inclusive bases on mainstream schools to try and move towards an inclusive system. I would say I think SEND white paper is coming in the autumn. We're very lucky to have Anne moving towards the heart of government in her role as Vice President of the Association of Directors of Children's Services. So if I want to know what's going on, I can always ask Anne. But a white paper is coming out and that will cover SEND, which is the most politically contentious of all the issues really, but also schools, which we know so fragmented. What else would I want to address in an update? Obviously, the government has extended free school meals, but it won't happen until September 2026. We are doing an awful lot of work around how this is all going to be delivered. It is really quite complicated because the government is extending eligibility to children whose families are on universal credit, and basically they're getting rid of what was a cap on parents' income of $7,400, which the Conservatives had imposed some years ago, which meant fewer families would be eligible, even though they were on universal credit. So they're getting rid of that. But because we have the Mayor's programme for primary, we've got to really work hard to get families to apply who are eligible for FSM under the government programme. At the minute, the new group of children are not going to be bringing pupil premium with them, which of course is what we want them to bring, because for our schools with high numbers of FSM, pupil premium makes enormous difference. So there's a few issues to be sorting out on that, and we do have a working group, and I think Anna's a member. We haven't met for some time. It went a bit dormant, but now free school meals has gone up the agenda again. So we will be meeting, and we hope to be able to encourage schools to join in joint procurement to reduce their costs around food and so on. I have visited, Chair, the 3 pilot breakfast clubs in the borough. That's the government-funded breakfast clubs. That's Earlham Primary, Holy Trinity, and this morning we were at St Mary Priory. St Mary's a little bit of an anomaly because it's a federated school, infant juniors, but the government only funded the infants. Don't ask me why, I don't know. Anyway, we have made a nice video about what we've seen, which we'll post, and I hope to write a letter to the Minister telling her how great her programme is. Please look at our video and think how wonderful we are. I'm just trying to think what else is of enormous. Oh, we did have our first inaugural meeting with local authority governors. So each governing body chair has one local authority appointee, not always appointed by the local authority, usually by the governing body, and we just sign it off. However, I have wanted to develop a bit of a relationship with local authority governors. I think if you're appointed by a local authority, you should at least know what the local authority thinks, or what our ideas are, what our views are about some of the issues going on in education. So we had an inaugural meeting, and I'm really pleased to know 15 governors came, and we will be following up. I think there's a lot of work to do to raise the level of knowledge of governors generally, I might say. Big complicated issues coming, and as the budgets shrink, responsibilities increase. Obviously, we're watching what's going to happen with Ofsted and the programme, what inspections and report cards and all of that stuff is going to be quite contentious. And finally, we're waiting for the bill to wend its way through Parliament. I think it might finally have wended through the House of Lords.
I think it's coming back in the autumn.
Coming back in the autumn to the Commons, which would mean it has gone through.
It's been through the House of Lords. It's going through, I think it's third.
So it goes to third reading in the House of Commons, which is usually a bit of a formality because the main reading is the second reading. Then you do the amendments and the committees. We did send a very long submission from Haringey, which I want to thank Jackie for all the work she did. This was in January, to the select committee about special needs, and I had been on my list to send to school in July now, so it's slightly late, but I'm going to send it this week to all the heads and chairs so they can see our own submission, and let people know that we are, engaged. It's really important to know local authorities engaged. And finally, the summer programme is now on the council's website, the Holiday Activity Food Fund and the Universal programme. Both of them are on there, and we hope very much that they will be very well attended. We are, of course, turning to a rather more gloomy subject. We are, of course, worried about the budgets. Haringey did get funding from the Comprehensive Spending Review. We got an additional, I think, 1.4 million. And that is, to my knowledge, ring-fenced. So for children, I know Anne's had to write a long delivery plan, which suggests it is. So we see what's going to happen as the budget process unfolds. For the co-optees, you'll appreciate we've had to get exceptional financial support from the government, so budgets are very tight. And we work with our schools to, on their side, which is a separate budget, education schools grant, to make sure that deficits are dealt with and so on. But overall, the budgets are tight. We're getting, I see, 2.7 million in supporting families, which I think is a consolidation of lots of grants. But I'm hoping that is ring fenced. Anyway, I'll leave it there and take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Brabazon. Can I turn to any questions? Yes, we'll start with Councillor Abella.
Thank you, Zena. I realise my question might be a rookie question, but it's my first. Let me do that. Could you explain how the government's free school meal scheme will interact with the Mayor of London's? Could you explain how the government's free school meals announcement will interact with the Mayor of London's free school meal pledge?
I can. The Mayor's funding commitment for free school meals will go on through the course of his administration. He is now committed to that. Where children are eligible for free school meals through the government, the aim is that we claim that way. So the Mayor picks up the rest of the universal free school meals. So the government funds all Key Stage 1. That is reception through to the end of year 2. So the government fund all those children. Within that cohort, there are children who are eligible for free school meals, even though the government funds all of them. So like three programs going on. Within that cohort, the infants, there are children whose families will be eligible for free school meals on the criteria that they are on benefit and their income is less than 7,400 a year. Those children attract pupil premium. So it is really important that every school maximises the numbers of children who are eligible for free school meals. And we drive, when I was a chair governor, I used to drive the head teacher mad. Are we doing it? Are we doing it? Are we doing it? And I would hope that those schools are being driven mad to make sure they're doing it in their own schools. Centrally, we have tried to tighten up and use the admissions process to identify families, because once you have an NI number, you can trace who's on benefit and who isn't. And that's really important. And we have drawn down over £1 million extra pupil premium by chasing the families. And I think there's more that has been chased through the GLA. So that's the infants. Juniors, it's not universal in that way by the government. Only the children who are on benefit were eligible for free school meals, government. The mayor has picked up the rest. Our job is to make sure we identify those parents, they don't feel stigmatised, but they claim for their free school meals, because we want schools to get £1,400 a head pupil premium. And for schools in Tottenham, where you have a large cohort of children, that is important. It will surprise you to know that only 26% of children in Borough are on free school meals, government version. And that's because we have a well-off West and a poor, so the numbers are a bit distorted. I don't know if that explains it, but.
So I just have one follow-up question, if I may, Chair. The meal would be the same regardless of whether you're funded by the mayor and the government. So you can't distinguish who is on benefits and who isn't.
The same dinner,
Yeah.
But you get paid at a different rate. The mayor pays more. The mayor's funding pays more per head than the government. Same food, but the schools do better in that way. But we need the children on free school meals eligibility to be in the government funding stream, because the schools get the pupil premium, and that is a lot of money for a school that's struggling with its budget. There is a thing, I can't remember what the position is with nursery. I don't know, Jackie, whether you know, but I might have to come back to you on that to clarify.
Thank you. Any other questions over here? Yes, Camilla.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the update. It's very interesting. I just wanted to ask about the Breakfast Club trial that went out, and we applied for it, weren't successful, unfortunately. The school that I'm a governor at, which is Ferry Lane in Tottenham. It's a very small 1-form entry school. Yeah, I heard that the funding provided doesn't actually match the funding that schools need to be able to provide healthy breakfast clubs. And I just wanted to know your views on that and whether that would be changing.
It's been really interesting talking to the 3 schools that were pilots, because they have completely different views. They want to make it work. The school was at today said they thought it was costing more, but they've got such small numbers. They haven't got any economies of scale. But the middle one, Holy Trinity, had large numbers. And the head teacher is absolutely driven to make this work. Absolutely driven. And she was so enthused by it. And she said she has really targeted the children in need. And it was absolutely buzzing, about 60 kids there. And it will grow next term. Earlham, the same. The head was absolutely driven. And they weren't so worried about the money. They thought they could make. I don't want to misinterpret, but my take on what they were telling me is they're going to make it work, whatever it takes. They will make it work, and they are feeding back to the DFE and so on. I think there's personally. I mean, I wouldn't we're in a public meeting, but it is sometimes hard to get schools on board to do things. And we really want schools to buy into a joint procurement, which you can do through the DFE. And so I'm hoping we're going to be following up with that, because if we can get economies of scale on buying food, we reduce the costs. So that is a mission that I've been on, and I hope that we will be following through more with heads on that in the autumn term. So if you can persuade your heads to be a bit enthusiastic about joint procurement, I'll very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further questions? Just one question from me, Councillor Rosen. Or actually two slightly separate questions. One is also on the free school meals. You mentioned it was 26%. Is that you then expanded and said about the kind of varying levels of wealth in the borough? Is that also because not everyone is claiming what they're eligible for, or is that simply the situation?
Well, we're in the, there's like a league table. You can say you're comparing with other boroughs. I think even if we get everybody to claim, the numbers will still be lower than Islington or Hackney, because we have such a divided borough, and it's more unstable. That's a guess. It really, what we have to do is encourage all our new parents to give us their NI numbers, and then the rest you can do. It's easy once you get that. So we're trying to do that at source, and that was a reform we put in last year through the working group. So why aren't we doing this? And we are doing it. And the team at Children's Services have been incredibly committed to try and make this work, and numbers are going up. But we sort of had a little bit of a lag when it just sort of settled down. But now we've got to start all over again because of the government's announcement. We've got a year to do that. Whether they will renege and suddenly allow the schools to have pupil premium, I don't know, but we'll see.
Thank you. Did you want to add something on there, or was no?
Not on the free school meal. Councillor Brabazon did invite me to say something about our annual engagement meeting that happened. Yeah. The purpose of the annual engagement meeting, it's part of the inspection framework. It didn't used to happen for the area send inspection, so it's a new process whereby you have your inspection and then they come annually to see how you're doing. We had our inspection in 2023, and so we're happy not to be inspected again for 5 years. But in the meantime, they come to speak with us. At this point, it's annually, but they want to be more proportionate going forward. For those who weren't here at the time, we got the highest grade for the send inspection, which we were really pleased with. And it's an area send inspection, so it includes partners. It's an inspection of Ofsted and CQC. And what they want to know is what have we done since the last inspection? And so we produce an annual self-evaluation, and therefore, and we send that to them in advance, and they ask us questions. And basically, we're saying to them that the recommendations from the inspection are included in the improvement plan, so we don't have two separate plans, and that's led by Jackie and her service. And basically they had no concerns because we continue to be on track. There are areas where we continue to not be satisfied with our performance as a system, and those are for wait times in the health area, or speech and language in particular, and probably other therapies. But we know that our colleagues in the health service are continuing to work incredibly hard and find pots of money for our children and young people, but also they're working to improve the system so that there is one gateway and then one varied service going forward. Yeah. So we're being succinct, and so unless there are any questions, then I won't, I won't invite Jackie to come in. But if there are questions, then Jackie will probably be able to answer them much better than myself.
Thank you, Anne. Are there any questions for Anne or Jackie? Yes, Councillor Gospel.
Thanks very much, and it's great that we're going up. And you mentioned about the way it's health and. Sorry, it was, what was it? Which one was it? That speech and language, but there's a wait for autism. There's about a year and a half wait. ADHD, those who've got ADHD to get diagnosed and all that. And what we're doing about that in order, I understand that's health, but I was at a meeting, they were saying the way, and I said, but you're talking about it's a year and a half of a child's education that is being missed. And I'm wondering what we're doing about that in order to make sure that these children are not losing out on their education.
Just want to check with Jackie that we had a detailed report to this committee at our last meeting. So you may remember what our health colleagues said at that meeting. I think Philip was it minuted and they had a presentation. So not much has changed since we had that detailed discussion around these tables, and it will be our health colleagues who lead on that who are best placed to give that overview. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. And then a final question from me, Councillor Brabazon, was about school closures. As we come towards the end of the academic year, I believe at least one school in the borough is closing. And I just wondered if there was anything to update us on that.
2 schools are closing. I should have had that in mind. But I don't know, I come here thinking I'm just going to answer questions. And every time I ask for an update, I should have written something. I do apologise. I forgot that bit, that I was supposed to do that bit. So yes, Tiverton School will be closing at the end of this term. And today I signed the final piece of paperwork for St Peter's and St Gilda's in the west of the borough. It is hugely regrettable. Nobody wants a school to shut at all. But the numbers are the numbers. And I was told there are 4 children at St Peter's and St Gilda's till the end of term. And whatever left of year 6 who are transferring, and all the children are being sorted, obviously. But it is really sad. But I do want to put that in a bit of context since you've asked me. 8 schools in Hackney, several in Islington, Camden, Catholic schools closing. This is a London-wide problem, and even the Secretary of State is worried about the birth rate now, because you can't have a country with such a low birth rate. And there are obviously big issues going on here. I think our team, I think Anne's team have done an absolutely brilliant job. We've worked very collaboratively in having a plan to minimise impact on schools. It has meant several schools have come one form entry, which brings different problems. But at the moment, as I understand, the position is stable. And so hopefully this will be it, and our schools can start to rebuild. I'm told that most reception places are full, even at the schools that we were really worried about. So that's really good.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Councillor Goscock, do you have one more question? Then we're going to move on to the next item of business.
So since you brought up about the empty schools, which, as you know, in South Tottenham, there's a big growing Jewish community. We've got some empty buildings. I'm wondering what can we do in order to support the Jewish community instead of going to Hackney and housing and having their kids being taught in houses, that we can support them in order to have schools in Haringey.
Thank you very much for your question. You'll be aware that we work very closely with leaders in that community to find solutions to the challenges that that are in, the challenges that we face in building schools within that community. But we haven't given up. We continue to work closely with them to be sure that we can move forward. You will be familiar with some of those obstacles that are about the statutory arrangements and requirements for opening a school. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next item of business now. So we have a private fostering annual report, which no, we don't have that yet. We come to item 10, where we have a children's social care performance report by Richard, I believe, online.
Yep.
I know
Good
you're all
evening.
very excited for the next item. We'll get there. Thank you, Richard. Over to you.
Okay. So if it's okay, everybody, I'll quickly go through the highlights and key points of this report and then open it up for questions. So starting on page 42, we're showing there that the referral rate over the last 6 months has fallen to a lower rate than for the past 4 years. Now this equates to the equivalent of 3,100 referrals a year, down from 3,300. So though it is a fall, a significant fall, it's not going to change much, and we expect it will recover and go up again in due course. As usual, a majority of these referrals are coming from the police, with health services coming second most common referral source. Looking at children in need and their assessments, 87% of assessments are completed on time. This is good performance. When we benchmark this, most people come up in the high 70s, low 80s. So to be in the high 80s or even low 90s sometimes is very good performance. And for the duration of SIN cases, most of our children in need cases are assessed and closed as no longer in need within 3 months, which again is healthy for everyone involved. So I'm whizzing through this on page 44 now, Philip. Okay. So on child protection plans, the rate of number on child protection plans does vary because it's obviously demand, if not demand-led, need-led. So it goes up and down. At the moment, we're very close to the England average of a rate of 39 per 10,000 population, child population. Majority of our plans, again, last under 2 years, and the few there that are currently open for more than 2 years, I'm very sure that Dion and Anne know the individuals by name, so they're very closely monitored. In terms of the why children on a child protection plan, we've got neglect is the biggest single reason now. This has changed from emotional abuse since 2023-24. So there is some movement there, but the two do overlap a bit. There is sometimes you could sort of choose either box to tick. So that's one to keep an eye on as well for Dion's team. For children starting to be looked after, the largest proportion of these children are actually over 16 now. So it's 29% of children coming into care are age 16 or 17. And the rate of children coming to care has fallen over the last few years, and this is reflected in our children in need numbers, which are lowest they've been for some time. And again, the reason why children come into care, abuse and neglect, like across common their statistical neighbours, the rest of the country and previous years, is the largest factor is abuse and neglect. Absent parenting, which includes the US, because the unaccompanied asylum seekers has fallen as a percentage, as we're having fewer of those come into our care for the last couple of years, really. So this is the total number of children looked after. The rate of 58 equates to 312 children, and of those, 41 are aged under 3. Some of those aged under 3 are placed with parents but without parental responsibility, family and friends, or potential adopters. Stability placements. This is normally a very good news story. The chart on the left there shows the number of children with 3 or more placements within the last 12 months. So there, a low number is good. And you can see we're normally at least as good as England and better than our statistical neighbours. And for the last full year, we were very much below those historic rates. That's really good news on stability. And on the short-term stability, the other one is long-term stability. So this is children who have been in care for more than 2.5 years, and how many have been in the same placement for the last 2 years. And there we got 74%, which again outranks the national figure and our statistical neighbours. So even, it says that at the bottom there, even though we're starting from a strong position, we have managed to improve on it. Stability of our social workforce, again, this builds very much into the whole quality of the package we offer. And on 24-25, only 9% of children had 3 or more social workers within a year, which you can see how that compares with our statistical neighbours listed there. That's very, very solid and consistent workforce. And again, the number of children with social workers, 61% of our children only had 1 social worker throughout the year. For everyone's favourite slide, the health and dental checks. Annual health assessment, 93%, above national and comparators. Had teeth checked, 87%. This is higher than the pre-pandemic rate. So this is just about as good as it's ever been. 87% there. And the immunisation, here we are a low figure, 43%. This is lower than our statistical neighbours, but this is having all the immunisations up to date, including flu jabs, which are annual, and there's a low take up of those. If we discount flu jabs, that number would be a lot higher. For care leavers, as usual, it's a good news story. With 92% of 19 to 21-year-olds in suitable accommodation and 55% in EAT. So this is 55%, doesn't sound very high for people in education, employment or training, but it does compare pretty well with the regional, the London and the statistical neighbours averages. So we would like it higher, but it's not as low as it sounds. For education and health plans, this is a ever-growing cohort of children, and to look at them now, it shows how important they are across the social care side of things, that 6% of our care leavers have an EHCP, 28% of our children in need, 23% of our looked after children, and 12% of those on a child protection plan. And the other one it shows you there, of all the vertical chart, sorry, shows you that whilst the majority of children on the EHCP aren't open to social care, it is a significant number that are. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. I will move straight to questions in the room. Do we have any questions over here? Yes, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you for that report, Richard. I'm not sure if my question is for you or for Anna actually, but I'm looking specifically at the referral data that you presented, the referrals to MASH. And I appreciate it's a very small data set. So when we're looking at trends versus last year in terms of the source of the referrals, obviously this year to date, we've seen a drop in, say, referrals from schools. My question for you is, on the face of it, a drop in referrals sounds good, but the flip side of that is actually, is there a risk that we're missing some referrals through certain sources? So my question is, if we see a change in trends, a drop in, say, from schools, what is being done to investigate the reasons behind the changing data for the referrals?
Thank you, Christine. If you could just turn your mic off. Thank you.
Richard, would you like me to start?
Certainly, yeah.
Okay. Yes. So it's a complicated process behind the referrals. No, that's absolutely fine. We scrutinise the data absolutely every which way. And so a drop in referrals probably means that we have a very good early health service, and we will triangulate that information with our cases in the early health service. Richard, am I right? We've seen an uptake. I'll hand over to Jackie. So basically, we don't celebrate a drop in referrals. We manage the system and we make sure that the system is as safe as it can be. We observe it and then look to see what's going on all the time. A drop in referrals isn't necessarily a good thing. It's the right referrals into the system at the right time. Yes, so I'll hand over to Jackie at this point.
So that's exactly the triangulation. So we have seen an increase within the early help space, and because of the family hubs model attached to our locality models within the community, what we're doing is being able to identify those needs much earlier and support those families without it getting to the stage that needs a referral through our match service. So that's definitely a strength of the model that we've got in place, just to give you assurance. And I would also say social workers in schools is also part of the community response, because they're directly in schools supporting children at the earliest stage.
Thank you for that. Yes, Anne.
So we work very closely with our schools sector through Jane Edwards, who's not sends apologies today, but all the time we're listening and speaking and engaging, and every case that comes in not every case, but we audit and just look at everything from all ways, and we listen too. And that's how we're able to balance the system. Welcome.
Councillor Goscock.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Regarding the EHCPs, there's been quite a jump from last year to this year, unless I'm reading it wrong. I'm just wondering how we're coping. If we got a big jump, how we're coping in order to be able to make sure we get the EHCPs in the timeline. And also, is there a reason why suddenly it's jumping so much?
Right. I'll pass over the second question to Jackie, but the first one is, a couple of years ago, EHCP timeliness was unbelievably good at 97%. It's still in the high 80s, low 90%, and the average across the country is, I think, 46% or 47%. So timeliness isn't something that we're overly concerned with in terms of being a problem for us. In terms of the growth, yes, the numbers are going up all the time, and I'm sure Jackie's got some thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councillor Groscroft. It is right that we are continuing to see a year-on-year increase in children with education and healthcare plans, but we've just recently had our census return, which has actually shown that compared with England and London, we are seeing a slower rate of increase, and that's attributed largely to our early intervention approach. So we're supporting children's needs at a much earlier stage without the need to have an education and healthcare plan. And we are seeing that coming through the system now. So compared with London and England, we're actually performing quite better. So our rate was 4.78% compared with the previous year, but the national rate is 10%, and the London rate is, I think, 7.5%. I could get the figures for you. So we're actually performing quite well. But you are right to point out that we continue to see a year-on-year increase, which reflects the national position.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up question? Yes.
We mentioned that our intake in school is going down. So the numbers are going down, the cases are going up. So, yeah.
You're absolutely right. So we continue to see increased complexity of needs. And so through the SEND transformation programme, but also referring to what Anne said earlier about autism and ADHD, we're developing all sorts of initiatives like our neurodevelopmental pathway to try and support those children. So we are seeing an increased complexity of need, even though our school numbers are slightly decreasing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions in the room? Yes, Camilla.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up the point about the children with up-to-date immunisation data. It's obviously very clear from the graphs that it's been going down since 2020. Obviously, this is not just something that happens in Haringey or London. It's obviously a widespread issue. But just intrigued to know why Haringey's data is dropping so rapidly compared to the England rate, and also what's being done to kind of perhaps have some kind of intervention plan, or are using the family hub model to help support and inform families on why immunisation is so important. Basically, what's the plan to help get that percentage back up with the England rate?
Thank you, Camilla. And if I could maybe add to that, just so that you don't have to answer a similar question twice. Because you mentioned, Richard, about the flu vaccine being part of that,
Yeah.
but obviously that is a nationwide story as well. So in addition, I'm kind of wondering what's going on here that is making that look different. And again, connected to Camilla's question about specific communities who aren't taking up the vaccine, because I know it does vary massively across the borough.
Yep.
And how are we reaching out to those communities that I assume are being identified, and what is being done to make sure that we're getting through in messaging that connects to individual communities? Thank you.
I think the first thing to understand here is these figures only relate to our looked after children. So it's not to do with specific families and the way the families are accessing them. It's to do with either the older children, reluctance built into their as adolescents, they make decisions, and for the younger ones, know that the foster carers, we do support them through various ways. I'm sure probably Dion's best place to talk about. We have recently. We've always had a historic, very, very good relation with our looked after children's nurse in the Bounds Green Health Centre, and she's recently retired and changed roles. So there was a slight blip as they were finding a permanent replacement, but the person they've got now is very good, and so we're hoping that will help as well.
Thank you. Over to you, Dion.
Thank you. It's something that we are very mindful of in terms of making sure that we are looking at every possible angle to ensure that our children and young people have their immunisations. As Richard has said, the fact that we include the flu vaccine is something that does impact the numbers that we have. We're working very closely with public health colleagues to understand both what the numbers would look like if we take out the flu vaccine, as well as if we, with us having it included. But I think it's important to say that we feel it's important to include all of the immunisations. Other things that we are doing is looking at when we have children have their first initial health assessment, making sure that we get the data there. So there's an opportunity at that point for us to check children's immunisation records. Also for children having their first looked after children's review, we make sure that we're capturing there. So we are taking every opportunity to make sure that the data that we've got about their immunisations is up to date, accurately recorded, and taking any steps to address any areas where we find that that's not the case. We are doing all that we can to make sure that children have their immunisations.
Thank you. Any further questions? If I may ask one further question then, Richard, which was on page 50 on the EAT report aspect. I'm noticing a drop, it seems to me, from the last few years. We're going down here. So we seem to have, I just wondered if you could expand on kind of what you think is contributing to that and how we can make sure our figures are doing the best that they can going forward.
I'm afraid I don't have a theory on that. I mean, we're very good at being in touch with all our old young people, so we always score very highly on the in touch score. But in terms of why that went up so much for those 2 years and now dropping back down again, I couldn't really say. I mean, I know we've got a very good cohort, almost 10% of ours in higher education, which is exceptional. But apart from that, I don't really know.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I was just interested in what we can. The more we understand, the more we can recreate good patterns and not recreate bad patterns. So yes, but thank you for that. I will close this item of business unless there's any further questions. Thank you. Okay, we will then thank you again for that useful presentation, Richard. We will move on then now to the private fostering annual report. I think I'm handing over to Sandy online for this one. Thank you, Sandy.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. Yes, I'm going to be presenting the key highlights from the private fostering report. So you all would have had a chance to have seen the report. So I'm just going to give an overall summary of what's included within the report. So obviously the legal framework and the relevant standards for a privately fostered child, it's defined as a child who's under the age of 16 or 18 years old if the child has a disability, and they're placed for 28 consecutive days or more with an adult who is not a relative of theirs. So the three main functions that the local authority will have in relation to private fostering is one, to raise public and professional awareness about private fostering and the legal requirements to notify Haringey Children's Social Care about any private fostering arrangements. The second function is to respond to any private fostering notifications, assess the arrangements, and to provide support to children and or young people with the adults that are involved in their day-to-day care. And third is to promote the information, advice and support that's available to privately fostered children, young people and private foster carers, also parents and those with parental responsibility. Some examples of children that may be privately fostered are children that are sent from abroad to stay with other family members, usually to improve their English or for educational opportunities. We also have adolescents that have broken ties with their parents, and they could be staying in short-term arrangements with friends or other people that they're not related to. Also children living with host families, which could have been arranged by language schools or other organisations, and children that, that are living with members of extended families, for example, great aunts, or somebody within their extended family network. So some of the statutory expectations for local authorities is for local authorities are expected to effectively monitor the way in which they discharge their duties and functions in relation to private fostering, and we're required to promote the awareness of the requirement to notify and monitor compliance, and also to appoint an officer specifically for this purpose. What we would usually do is qualified social workers will undertake an initial visit to the placement and within 7 days of the private fostering notification. The role of the social worker is to carry out checks on all household members, notify relevant agencies. They will then, once it's deemed a private fostering arrangement, there will be ongoing monitoring, support and advice that's provided to the family. So following the initial visit to the family, the social worker is to complete further visits at least every 6 weeks in the first year, and at intervals of no more than 12 weeks in subsequent years. And that would only be in cases where it's deemed safe and appropriate to do so. Otherwise, we would continue to do 6 weekly visits even after the first year of a private fostering arrangement. When social workers are undertaking private fostering assessments and also undertaking the 6 weekly visits, there will be a focus on children's cultural and ethnic needs. There will be a focus on their development and emotional well-being, and any support in relation to educational and health issues. Social workers will also provide support and advice to the carers. So this might mean, signposting them to relevant agencies in order to support them with the day-to-day arrangements. It might be linking them in with the UK Border Agency, assisting them to access other services, providing advice and support. For example, if there's a risk of breakdown in the arrangement, referrals to relevant agencies for additional support. This might include CAMS or other specialist services. So So the private fostering arrangements, assessment is done by the frontline social workers who determine the arrangements in conjunction with their team managers and service managers. We know that following the Ofsted 2023 inspection, it was found that the identification of and response to children in private fostering arrangements needed to improve. Following on from that, the local authority responded with a number of surgeries which we held for practitioners, and this was to support practitioners and carers to better understand pathways to permanency for children in privately fostered arrangements. This also included identification of private fostering arrangements, and this further supported the increased awareness, understanding and knowledge of private fostering arrangements within Haringey's children's social care. The private fostering social worker is expected to provide monitoring, advice and support to the privately fostered children. And this is done through the statutory visits every 6 weeks. And the private fostering social worker is based in the fostering, adoption and special guardianship service and overseen by the service manager for fostering and permanence. So just moving on to our data from 2024-25, there were 5 children in total that were open throughout the year under a private fostering arrangement during that period. So of the 5 arrangements, 1 child had been open since 2021. The involvement ended when the child turned 16 years old. Another child was opened from August 2024, and again the involvement ended when the child turned 16 years old. And there was another child that was open from April 2023, and again the private fostering arrangement ceased when the child turned 16 years old. So in summary, during the period of the 1st of April to the 31st of March 2025, there were 5 private fostering arrangements in place. 2 of the private fostering arrangements ended before the 31st of March due to children turning 18. And at the end of March 2025, Haringey had 3 children open under private fostering arrangements. So throughout the whole year, from 2024 to 25, there were 3 new notifications that Haringey received on private fostering arrangements. And of the 3 notifications, 2 of them actually progressed to private fostering assessment stage. From the 5 private fostering cases during that year, we had 1 child from overseas, and the intention was for the child to return back to overseas. There were 2 children from overseas with the intention to stay, and 2 children were privately fostered in the UK and under alternative living arrangements. So the 1 child that didn't progress to a full private fostering arrangement, even though it came in as a private fostering notification, was 1 young person where they were initially living with their father. The father had travelled out of the country briefly, and which resulted in the young person staying with an extended member of the family. This would have become a private fostering arrangement if the arrangement had exceeded the 28 days. However, father returned back to the country under the 28 days, hence it didn't progress to a private fostering arrangement. The 3 notifications that were received as of March 2025 came from the child's schools, which was an appropriate source. And it's anticipated that the current work and the planned development work that the service are doing will continue to build on this. So the role of other agencies involves them being able to recognise private fostering arrangements, understanding of private fostering notification requirements, and being able to make referrals to Haringey's children's social care if they're notified or if they become aware of any private fostering arrangements. So the service have been working quite intensively over the last year, more than the last year, but during the year of 2024-25, there was a lot of awareness raising activity that went on within the service. So the private fostering worker continued to raise public awareness and professional awareness about private fostering and the legal requirement to notify Haringey's Children's Social Care and the fostering service about any planned or private fostering arrangements. So some of the work that was done was around Haringey's, the development of the web page, and which had been updated to include private fostering links and information. This is located on Haringey Council's website. There's a private fostering app. Throughout the reporting period, there had been articles in family hubs, Haringey foster carers newsletters, GP and health professional newsletters as well. There's been presentations at GP forums, digital communication and in-person presentations have been utilised to raise awareness with professionals across the organisation. There's been physical presentations which have been delivered to nursery staff across the borough, designated safeguarding leads, and other school staff, community groups and GP forums. There's also bi-monthly information sessions that are delivered at the family hubs, fostering information sessions at Wood Green Library and North Middlesex Hospital. We've also implemented a multi-agency private fostering working group, which takes place on a monthly basis to look at further awareness raising activities, and also development of the use of technology and social media platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, and as I mentioned earlier, our website as well. The private fostering social worker attends their own private fostering training and briefings on private fostering policy and practice. The private fostering social worker also attends meetings with other local authorities, which is a forum in which to share information and improve policy and practice. As I mentioned before, there was a total of 5 known private fostering arrangements during the reporting period, and the children were open at various times throughout the year. I think there's a lot of work that's been done in developing the actual the visits that are being undertaken on a 6-weekly basis to the families. We've had children's voices within the report, which you would have read. But I'll go on to read one of the voice of the child just to give you a brief indication of capturing the voice of the child. I've not been to my dad's house, but I know where he lives when he comes to the UK. I think I have a close relationship with him. I know that my dad has struggled with his business, but he's always been supportive and provided for me. My dad often checks in with me on the weekends and during the week. I'm often introduced to uncles I have not met, and there is always someone new that I'm meeting as a relative. I go to regular family events and outings. I have a huge family back in Uganda. I don't want to go back to Uganda as I like living in the UK. So we've had lots of positive feedback from children, hearing their voices about the private fostering arrangements which they're living in. So just a bit of background around the 5 private fostering arrangements. 3 of the children were from African heritage. We had 1 child of Black Caribbean and 1 white European child. Out of the 5 arrangements, 4 of them were females and 1 was a male child. We recognise the fact that there's still some areas for development in terms of raising the profile further, even though there's been a lot of increase in the awareness raising activity. We continue to build on that. We're regularly reviewing what activities are taking place and how we can enhance the work that we're doing within the service. We've recently undertaken audits of the private fostering cases that we've currently got open in the service, and just as evidence of some of the work that's been going on in terms of raising the awareness, we can see that our numbers of referrals and notifications that we're receiving are beginning to increase. So as of, which is not within the report, but from April, we had 2 children that remained open from last year under private fostering arrangements. We've had 2 further referrals that we've received. So we've currently got 4 children that are living in private fostering arrangements. And we've recently had 2 further notifications that are currently being assessed as potential private fostering arrangements. So that's a summary of the report.
Thank you. That very comprehensive summary. And I'm moving now to see if there's any questions. Any questions at all in the room? Yes, Councillor Groscott.
It's not a question, it's an observation. I'm reading the voice. Sorry? I'm reading the voices of the children, and it seems like they're normal children. You know, they want to go to school, they don't want to go to school. Some days they like this subject, that subject, which is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we were really pleased to bring in the voice of the child, because I think it gives that reassurance about the conversations that we're having, and to hear from them, their experience directly is really what we need to know about. So I'm glad we've been able to bring it in. I'm glad to hear your observation. Thank you.
I think it was so comprehensive that everyone's had their questions answered. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We will move on then with the yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please, Anne, do come through.
Was only to add that this remains an area that we will always be focused on, so that we're vigilant, and we would appreciate if you could also advocate the notion of private fostering all the time. So again, a bit like referrals, we're not missing any young people. 5 is the largest number we've had for a long time. When Ofsted came to visit in 2023, we've had so many inspections since then. We had 1, in years before that we had 2. So we're really, 5 doesn't seem right. Thank you.
That's something, Chair. I mean, it's a small group of children, but it's an area which is hard to regulate. And while I've been lead member of the government, there has been a tightening up of regulations. And we know from the history of this borough how important it is to have that tightening of the regulation, because when it wasn't regulated very well, things can go under the radar. And obviously, we don't want that to happen. So although it's a small cohort, I want to say to Sandy, I thought it was a really comprehensive report, which I'd read earlier today. And I think the tighter we are in monitoring, the better, because as the report indicates, there are probably more children, given the nature of our borough's population, than are officially within the system. So being a bit vigilant is a really good thing. And I just want to say it was a really good report.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Brabazon, and thank you, Anne, for those comments. And yeah, I think it's clearly such an important area. And actually, I think it's testament to such a report on such a small number of children that we take this really seriously as a borough, and that we're making sure that no stone goes unturned, and that just because it's a small area, we haven't kind of gone well, that's not really something we're going to spend a lot of time on. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate Anne, your reminder for us all to be aware of it and to advocate further, and make sure that any children in that system are known about and therefore best advocated for. So thank you for that. And I apologise for not coming to you earlier. I will now move on to the next item, which is simply to note the work programme going forward for the for this municipal year. Philip, if I can turn to you on that. And at this stage, if any officers would like to leave, we will be finished pretty shortly, but if you would like to leave now, you are very free to do so. It's a long and hot day.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Okay, so I just quickly move to agenda item 12, which is a standing item around the panel's work programme. So you have a cover report, and attached to that cover report is the draft work programme for the year at page 73. You will see that there are a number of items put forward for the meetings, but there is also some space on there for additional items. So if members have anything that they would like to put forward, perhaps if they could email either myself or the chair. Yeah, in addition, so just to note the work programme, I guess, and to ask members to put forward any additional items, particularly for our next meeting, which isn't that far away, which is the 9th of September. So if there's anything you would like to add, please drop me an email.
Thank you, Philip. Yeah, and we're always open to member suggestions, anyone else, so do send us emails on that. There are no items of urgent business as far as I know, and therefore just the dates of the future meetings. So just to note, we have 4 dates in, if people can make sure they're in their diary: the 9th of September, the 18th of November, the 15th of January, and the 26th of February. And I will see you all there. I will hereby close the meeting. Thank you. Enjoy.